Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cold Outreach Success Stories, where we interview regular business people just like you who had great success with cold outreach on email and other channels. We go deep into the process with hot tips around targeting, messaging, personalization, so that you can take away tips to implement in your cold outreach starting tomorrow. Today, we have Lief from Salesfolks.com. Welcome to the show, Lief.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So, what do you guys do, and how do you make money?
Yeah, great question. So what we had found is that nearly half of all sales hires never end up hitting their quota. That was not only just a crazy statistic to me, but it was something that I had experienced firsthand at the prior company that I had worked for. And so it inspired me to start a company called Salesfolks. And Salesfolks is a platform that helps revenue leaders to do a better job of finding and hiring salespeople. If you've ever been in the role where you're trying to build out a sales team, you'll know that hiring sales professionals is really, really hard. If we're being honest, most of us wildly overestimate how good we are at picking salespeople.
Yeah.
And even one or two mishires can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in recruiting and onboarding and training costs. And not to mention, the wrong salesperson injects significant lost opportunity cost into our model. So our mission here at Salesfolks has been to reach out and help revenue leaders make better hires using maniacally focused effort and data science. And we knew if we could do this, it wouldn't just help to move the needle, but it would actually help to combat one of the largest and most inefficient cost centers that almost all companies have.
Yeah, that sounds like a big problem to solve. So what kind of companies do you usually work with?
Yeah, our ICP, our ideal customer profile, is typically revenue leaders like business owners, CEOs, CROs, as well as sales playbook owners like a VP of sales. We use various tools to identify the targets, and then we pull contact info such as company name, job title, email address, etc., as part of our prospect and pipeline development process.
Got it. So pretty dialed in as a segment, right? So is it mostly B2B SaaS, or do you look at other industries as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Initially, our beachhead, our focus was on B2B SaaS exclusively. It was a space that we knew. I previously founded, grew, and sold the company Engage Incorporated, one of a larger chat technology providers here in the US. And just having gone through that experience, I knew SaaS and B2B quite well. And so we decided to make that our initial area of focus, that beachhead. However, we have branched out a little bit more as we've identified, new potential verticals as well to further extend our model.
Got it. Interesting. Makes a ton of sense. Okay, so I'm assuming you do a ton of outbound as well, given that you're selling to the persona that does, the same thing. So what does that process look like? How do you do outbound?
Yeah. First off, we're reliant on that. We were an unknown brand, and we did not come to market with a large marketing budget. We didn't raise millions of dollars in venture capital here, so we didn't have a lot of money to throw at the problem. So we looked at, doing outbound and particularly cold outreach as a necessary tactic for us to be able to gain initial foothold in the marketplace. We try to keep our campaign sizes relatively small and highly customized. Nearly all of our campaigns are under 5,000 targets, for example. In a single campaign period, we may try 4 to 6 different messages, so we'll shake up our messaging quite a bit. But essentially, we're just doing a lot of split testing for message efficacy. I don't have a source around this statistic, but I know that I've seen or read this several times. But when I was doing outbound marketing 15 years ago, it was something like 3 to 5 times that you had to reach out and get in front of a targeted prospect,
Yeah.
but before they would even read a message. So
Yeah.
there was like a bit of a numbers game there. Today, I've heard that number is like 12 to 15 times.
Yeah.
So one of our big learnings here is that it takes custom messaging and repetitive messaging in order to be able to find signal in all of this noise in the marketplace. We do some LinkedIn, but more so we tend to do email. We don't think email is a bad channel at all. I think it was overused for a number of years and got pretty crowded. But then there was a bit of a general pullback. And I will tell you, without giving away too much inside baseball here, that cold outbound email is our largest source of net new leads.
Interesting. So it still works, right?
Yes, it absolutely still works. But there's a lot of nuances, like anything in life. There's a lot of nuances to number one, making that channel work, and number two, actually being successful in it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So let's go into some of that without giving away too much. So when you're looking at creating these campaigns, what does the personalization or the targeting process look like so that like they reply more?
Yeah, well, we do the obvious, like injecting first name into the email. We use other specific referenceable content like company name, to make it even more specific. But you know what? It isn't just the customization of the email that matters. Mm-hmm. I think today prospects expect that anyway. If you don't do it, they just assume that you're completely unsophisticated, or they find it very depersonalizing. So I think pretty much everyone is doing that today. So that in and of itself, going customized isn't necessarily a differentiator. I have arrived at the conclusion of what really matters is adding value. And so what do I mean by that? Do you have white papers, educational content, calculators, or other forms of valuable tools that you can offer? We have found that these freebies can really help. And so you want to, in your messaging, come bearing gifts. You need to really ask yourself this rhetorical question is, how do I add value to this particular prospect? And you don't have to be overly customized. You don't have to say, hey, I saw that we went to the same college together, for 2 years back in, 1998. Like, you don't have to go to that level of customization to necessarily cut through to them. What you do need to do is very, very quickly articulate, how you're going to add value to them. And I think that if you do a good job of that, it can work for you. Instead of asking that prospect for something, you give them something first. One of my business mentors is a gentleman by the name of Dan Tyre. Dan was one of the initial team members at HubSpot. And he's someone that I talk to frequently, at least every month. And one of the things that I really learned from him, he was also the first salesperson at HubSpot, and helped to take that organization to multiple $1 billion in value. And what they did was simply masterful in that their inbound content strategy has always consisted of giving away free value. It's been a users, not customers, community building strategy. And so, what I learned through that is if you're not giving something away, you're probably not maximizing what you could be getting. And so you really want to think about this as two concentric circles. At the center are your prospects, who you want to potentially convert into users and customers. And then think about it with another circle around that, which is your whole community. A lot of your community are never going to actually convert or be paying customers, but some of them will. And so we put a lot of undue focus, or I think we put too much focus on just what are the prospects and what does that conversion funnel look like, and how do we, gap or plug all the funnel leakage issues and really convert more of those customers to pay, to paying. That makes a lot of sense. But before that, what we really are not doing is spending enough time focusing on how do you build a very large community and audience. And the way to do that is, in my estimation and experience, is give away tools and value that draw them in there. And then some of them will actually self-identify becoming leads and prospects, and then SQLs, these sales qualified leads, and eventually some of them are going to convert. And so I think, rather than thinking the top of the funnel is an SQL, I would go up a stage and actually build onto your funnel and say, is there a community of people that, you can attract through adding value, with the idea that there's a numbers game to this here. And the more community you have, the more future potential you're going to have for even more SQLs and eventually conversions, if that makes sense.
That makes a ton of sense. I love that. I mean, I recently read a really good LinkedIn post around it. So they say that at any given point of time, only 3% of your target market is in the market to buy right now, right? Those are the people that you're targeting through traditional outbound, right? Like the cold email approach that you have asking for time. The other, 97% is segmented into multiple, at different stages of the buyer journey, right? Like some are, not aware that they have a problem. Some are aware of the problem, but not aware of the solution. Some are problem aware and solution aware, but not aware of your solutions, right? So for each of those, segments, there's different content that you can push to them that will, move them along to the next, next part of the funnel. So that's where I think it's really important that, sales in that way rediscovers marketing, which I think HubSpot did brilliantly, right? Like website graders, like, your email marketing, subject line generators, and all of that. So by doing a lot of that value giving, like giving a lot of value away, what they essentially were doing is nudging people down that whole funnel, right? From like not aware that they have a problem to, okay, I'm now a customer, right?
Yeah, you said it better than I could. I hadn't heard the 3% number before, but I can't say that I'm surprised by it in the slightest. One of my good friends and a former colleague and someone I just have a mad amount of respect for, his name is Carlin Linhart, and he's held some of the most senior level marketing roles here in the United States. More recently, he was the global chief marketing officer for Papa John's, the nationwide chain of pizza restaurants. And Carlin used a phrase for that that he called the need state aperture, meaning there's a very little window, a very little opening when the customer is in the appropriate need state. And how do you take that number you put to it, 3%? How do you take that 3% and actually potentially blow that number up and make that bigger? And I think you're exactly right, is, continuing to hit the customer multiple times, making sure that you're staying top of mind so that they see enough frequency that they do turn back to you to self-identify and raise their hand when they are in an open need state aperture. And then lastly, what are the tools that you're actually giving them to make it very easy for them to reach out to you? I think a lot of us, particularly in B2B SaaS, and I've even been guilty of this, is we tend to want to automate everything. But the reality is that when you're in that need state aperture, when you have an opening, typically it's the most helpful solution that is going to get the money. Or in other words, the squeaky wheel is the wheel that gets the grease, right? Yeah. And so trying to give them a very easy way to get help from you when they are in that is something that I think we all need to think through, and we can do a better job of. I've even been guilty of this before, where it's like, I'm not really thinking about how is it on a one-to-one basis that particular prospective customer, when they are in an open need state, how do I make it very easy for them to alert me to that and get back in touch? And if you try and automate all that process, sometimes you lose a little bit of the human, the qualitative aspect when you focus too much on the quantitative piece. And I know, like with Leadzilla and your approach, I think you've got a very healthy premise on, like you want to try and provide automation, use technology, but on the other hand, it's like, you also want to be there as a human being and be approachable and accessible. And that I think that still matters a lot, because at the end of the day, people still buy from people. They buy from people they know and they trust. And until the singularity of technology allows this, there's no true way to replicate the personality, the personal selling skills, the white glove approach, the high touch approach to having that person there to help you when you are ready to potentially buy.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I think you raised some very interesting points around the role of technology as well. Like I have certain opinions around it, particularly with the rise of Chat GPT. It's all the rage now. I think sales will fundamentally change as AI gets personality. Is essentially what Chat GPT is, AI with personality. So let's see. I mean, the next 2 to 3 years are going to be very, very interesting for sales tech.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about and lead up to our discussion here, you had had a little bit of dialogue that you shared with me as you were thinking about tactics and approaches here. And one of those things that you had been curious about was high performing messaging and email copy, for example. And what does the approach that we're using look like, and are we doing split testing, for example? And I thought it was such a timely question. I have used, I've spent so many hours obsessing over copy, even specific word choices. On my to the side of my desk here, I've got the new Merriam-Webster's dictionary and practical English handbook and all of these different things that I've tried to use as instruments to augment me to become a better writer. I've spent just so much time obsessing over specific word choices. And then last November, the world changed, in my opinion. I was a very early adopter last November of OpenAI and Chat GPT. Like, I think it came out on like November 5th, and I was like there on the 7th. Complete game changer, in my humble opinion. Generative technology has enabled me to be able to run faster and run hotter. Why? Because language and prose can be mastered programmatically. There is a formula, there is a science to that. Listen, I took 5,000 level English in college. So I have a fairly good grasp of writing. But what I have seen generated by GPT-3 and now more recently GPT-4, it simply takes my words and makes them even sharper, easier to consume, makes them more concise. Is this stuff scary? Heck yeah, it is. It's really scary. But you're not going to roll back this technology, right? It's here to stay. Yeah. And the smart marketers like you and I, we were also becoming AI operators, and we're harnessing this technology to get more done, improve the overall quality of our messaging. And that used to take a lot of time and work. If you're not using this technology, you're going to be less competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. Like, and combine that with email automation software, and then you're suddenly putting out, you're live testing different messaging, at a scale of maybe even thousands of people a day. So you're gonna find the winning messaging and scale it much faster than anyone out there.
Absolutely. Completely
Awesome.
agree.
Awesome. So getting into one of my final questions. So what mistakes did you first make when you started, with this whole cold outbound campaign thing?
I'm embarrassed to say, but I went too big too fast. I thought get as much target data, as many prospects as possible, and sort of go big or go home.
Yeah.
Many moons ago at a prior company, I had done that, and I was just emailing too many targets with too broad a message, and frankly, I had the wrong cadence and too much frequency in there. My advice is start small, go small, find success, and then build up on top of that success. You need to have data validation of your assumptions, or you're going to end up someplace that you don't want to be. If you go too big too quick, you're only going to take whatever problems existed there and you're going to just magnify the problem. So you don't want to do that. Also, for those who are sort of newbies in this area, email reputation is fickle. So there's things like blacklists and other things happening behind the scenes, behind the curtain. All this plumbing, particularly with email, it's hard to establish credibility, especially if you are a new emailer in any form of mass email. But it's very, very easy and quick to be able to lose that reputation. So you definitely are going to want to double click and do a little bit deeper dive to understand, where can you get hurt. And you're going to want to, again, start off small, build reputation. That means smaller campaign sizes, really work on doing split testing messaging, really take a look at, what are the open rates, what are the click rates, what is the ratio of those to, unsubscribes, or the dark horse there, having any spam reports replied. You should be looking at those ratios, do that at a much smaller scale. And then when you really feel like you're dialed in, you want to go up. No two companies are created equal. No two campaigns and messaging are created equal. What are open rates for one particular type of company and target audience versus another's can just be a wild variance there. So, understand, that a baseline needs to be established, and then you want to try and focus on a continuous improvement sequence. How do you keep making those numbers even better? So it's going to take some trial and error, but understand what the pitfalls are so that you don't get into that right away. Like burning an email address, for example. If just running out and doing a 2,000 email campaign using your own email address, if you get a bunch of spam reports back on that, you may have trouble with inbox delivery with your email address for the next 2 years.
For sure. I mean, like in email and as in life, reputation is easy to burn, hard to gain. So a lot of people don't get it because they are not necessarily technical, but there's a lot of technical infrastructure that goes into this whole plumbing that, your message, your email, goes from your inbox to other inbox. And then there's a lot of, work done behind the scenes done by, ESPs like Google, Microsoft to make sure that, spam, the spam is as low as it can be and the signal is as high as it can be. So it's an old channel now, about 20 years old now, right? More than 20. Hotmail was 1999. So like just stay on the good side of the ESPs. That's the takeaway, I think.
Yeah, and you're talking about web-based or browser-based email. I'm approaching 50 years of age, and I've been doing email for more than 35 years of my life. Email came out of the U.S. military, and it's been around for a long time. And so you're absolutely right. You're pointing out that we are using a very outdated old technology that has a whole set of technical customs and history around it that we can't change. And so you do want to do a little bit of homework and get to understand, how that works, and and how do you remain whitelisted, and how do you actually avoid specific words that you use in your email campaigns that are often flagged or can hurt scores if you're trying to get those email campaigns through filters. So you want to be a curious person.
Yeah, I mean, that's just good advice for life, right? Like just stay curious. I think that helps with more things than just cold email. All right, so on to my final question. So what are some of the things that you're excited about trying to improve your cold outreach process?
Boy, I'm going to be a wet blanket here. I'm totally, this being the last question, I wish that I didn't sound so existential in my answer, but honestly, there's nothing really exciting about this. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe it's my attitude. But I think it's okay that this isn't exciting. Yeah. And it's okay for you to not be in love with this. Your dream as a child may not have been to wake up as an adult and be doing cold outbound email. I mean, let's face it, it's not always a terribly exciting or sexy thing.
Yeah.
Cold email, though, is part of a set of marketing motions. And I have a lot of hobbies and things around this world that interest me. And cold email, for a long time, it just wasn't one of them. And I think that it was a matter of the lens that I looked through it at. Nevertheless, it's a channel that's available to us. So it's part of our job, to roll up our sleeves and get in there and figure it out. And sometimes it's frustrating. Often it's boring, but it is necessary. And, just doubling down on the curiosity piece. I think your curiosity will be your greatest asset when approaching cold email. There's this phrase called tabula rasa. It's a term that means approaching something with a clean slate. Each time that you're putting a campaign together, you got to sort of check your ego at the door, because otherwise you're going to carry forward, this whole set of assumptions that you had on prior campaigns and what you thought worked. Instead, try to look at what you're doing with really a clear head and fresh eyes. It can be hard to do, but you will find that you're going to make pivots in your strategy over time, and that's going to lead to really positive performance. And this is where you'll get reinvigorated about doing something as unexciting as cold outbound email. You'll actually get into it a little bit because you'll sort of just naturally start to gamify it a little bit. Your curiosity will be, how do I really optimize my performance here? And that curiosity will have you looking at the numbers, and the numbers will then drive your behavior to want to improve it. Either that, or you're probably in the wrong career field and you probably got to get a different job. But it's okay for it to be a little boring at times. But that curiosity and not getting too overly cocky or confident, realizing that you need to adapt and change, to changing times. I think that's the best advice I could give. That really keeps me moderately excited about doing something that for most people, they would just look at it and say, yeah, this is like not the most exciting or interesting area. But we as marketers, this is a powerful tool, and so it's our job, it's incumbent upon us to try and learn how we can best take advantage of this tool. And trying to look at it anew every time that you walk into it, I think, is my best advice, because that's how I've been able to innovate and optimize at a lot quicker rate. If you just sit back on your butt and you think that the same messaging and the same frequency and just sort of going on autopilot is going to get you there, it is not. You have to be throwing new stuff at potential customers. Otherwise, they sort of wither away, or they start unsubscribing, because you're not, offering any value.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those channels that you constantly have to approach with like a scientist's mind, right? Like it will naturally surprise you, right? Like it's the truth in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Right. Awesome. Great. I loved having you on. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I hope our listeners learned something from this show as well.
Or great to connect with you here. Thank you so much for this, and appreciate the time, and all of the audience out there. Good luck. This is a worthwhile endeavor to tackle this problem, and looking forward to seeing some of your emails hit my inbox at some point here.
That's the dream, right? All right. Thanks for coming on, Lief.
So that's all the time we have, folks. I really enjoyed the episode. I hope you did too. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, whatever you can to spread the word out about cold outreach success stories so more people can enjoy and learn from the show. All right. That's all, folks. Bye-bye.